I did not want to see this movie initially. This movie, Cabrini, is a historical drama, not my kind of movie, based on the story of a Catholic nun, I'm Protestant, and it's planned to be released on National Women's Day. So yeah, I didn't think that I was the intended target audience for this one. So when Angel reached out to me asking if I'd be interested in reviewing it, I almost turned it down. But they offered me a private theater screening and I thought, what would happen if I brought a diverse group of 20 plus people of various ages and backgrounds, and then I saw what they thought about the movie? And to my surprise, almost all of us walked out saying the same two things, that this movie was way better than we expected, and we're actually really happy that we saw it. So if you're thinking that this might not be the movie for you, let's talk about why it might be, and also what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and I'll also give my thoughts on it from a Protestant, non-Catholic perspective. Let's get into it. And by the way, per usual, I won't be giving away anything that you can't find in the trailer or the synopsis, so you don't have to worry about any spoilers. So if you haven't heard about this movie, Cabrini is based on the true story of Frances Cabrini during the years of 1880 to 1917. The movie starts off with Cabrini, who wants to be a missionary in China, but was denied because of her poor health. After being turned down by the Vatican several times, she decided to go to Rome and speak with the Pope directly. Due to her persistence, the Pope reluctantly granted her request, but he tells her that she has to start in the West rather than the East. So he sends her off to New York to do missions along with 5 others. During the time that she's out in New York, the doctor told Cabrini that she only had a few years to live due to her poor health. So she decided to start working right away in building an orphanage for children and organized catechism for the poor immigrant children who migrated to New York. And as the movie goes on, she goes through setback after setback and obstacle after obstacle, all in opposition to her efforts. So in the face of adversity, Cabrini has to find a way to overcome these seemingly impossible obstacles, so that way she can not only educate, but also provide shelter for the children that she grew to love. Okay, now from a production standpoint, by the time we were only a couple of minutes in, I already knew that this movie was going to be done incredibly well. The set designs and the costumes really made it feel like it was filmed in 19th century New York. It was done so well that it legitimately made me wonder where it was shot and how much, if any, of it was digital, given how insanely realistic it looked. When it comes to the cinematography, it was almost too good. There were so many good and creative shots that they used, like for example when they would use the camera and the lighting to show Cabrini how she's presented in Catholic iconography. They had the light lit brightly behind her, showing her dressed in her black habit. But as amazing as a lot of these shots were, sometimes the lens flares in the creative shots were a little distracting because they were so creative that it actually pulled me out of the story long enough for me to think about how cool those shots were. And when it comes to the acting was definitely top notch, as they had a lot of seasoned actors in this film. They had John Lithgow from Third Rock from the Sun, Interstellar, Dexter, and others, David Morse from The Green Mile, and lots of other A-list actors that I'm sure you've seen before in other films. And even the kids in the film, they were absolutely amazing. And we can't forget about the sound. The sound was also done exceptionally well. They set up the soundtrack in a lot of places. They emphasized the dramatic movements in the scenes, which really helped to dramatize what was going on. The only things that I didn't like from a production standpoint was first, that there were some large sections where they were speaking Italian, and some of the subtitles seemed to go too quick for me to be able to read. And secondly, the pacing seemed to lag a little bit. Now, I know that because they were trying to be historically accurate, it was essential to include some of these longer scenes, but they didn't seem to carry the story forward in significant ways. So some of these scenes seemed to drag on too long for me, but they were somewhat offset by some really exciting parts that jolted me back into paying attention. Now, when it comes to whether or not you should bring your children to see it, it should be noted that there was one scene where a character uses a harsh curse word, some other suggestive language is used, there was some violence, and there were also some Italian racial slurs that were used as well. All right, now let's talk about what I thought about this movie from a theological perspective. So as most of you already know, I'm not Catholic, so I expected to have some pretty sharp theological disagreements with this one. But interestingly enough, aside from some Catholic imagery, this movie strangely wasn't all that theological. Although the context of the setting was religious, for a non-Catholic like me, the movie seemed to be more historical than theological in my opinion. Now, some people might think that that's a good thing, but as a Christian, I was honestly hoping to see more theological elements, like how she drew strength from God during the times of intense turmoil, or how her overcoming these giant feats was providential in some sense, but those elements were mostly missing in the movie. And despite the film being about mission work, in my opinion, it was a little too light on the Christian stuff, even in scenes where it would have been appropriate to include and it wouldn't have felt forced. But still, with all that being said, the main message that I took away from the film was the power in persevering in what you believe that God is calling you to do, despite every seemingly impossible feat that gets in your way. And so for those of us that are Christians, we can draw from Cabrini's example of persevering through obstacles that are probably greater than the ones that most of us will ever face. Seeing her example even inspired me to question how strong I really am and what extremes I would go through for Christ despite countless discouraging setbacks. So keeping all of this in mind, I think that if you go to see the movie, you won't be disappointed because I brought 20 plus Protestant friends with me to go see it from all ages and all different backgrounds, and virtually all of us genuinely enjoyed it and we're happy that we saw it. And if you do choose to go see it, go ahead and click the link down below and use my promo code WYM to get 25% off of your ticket now at a discounted pre-sale price. And now I'll ask you, are you planning to go see it? And if so, go ahead and come back here and let me know what you thought about the movie in the comments because I'm really curious to hear what you think. And the next time that you stop believing that you can continue to persevere through these seemingly impossible obstacles, what are you gonna say? What do you mean?